So, we are entering into the last few chapters of the book of Exodus. That's how far we have already gone through our studying of the Torah this year. And to kind of bring you up to speed, we received revelation at Sinai. And then Moses went up the mountain and stayed there for 40 days and 40 nights, receiving all the spiritual teachings, the rules, the rituals, the injunctions that he was going to bring back to us at the end of his meditation retreat. But while he was away down below, we started to lose faith. We started to think a week or 2 or 3 in that he's never going to come back, is he? He's going to just stay up there and we're never going to hear about him. And so we began to wonder what is next for us, and we became afraid. And what we do when we become afraid is that we revolve back to old patterns, old habits that are familiar and comfortable, old ways of being. So we took all the gold we had stolen from the Egyptians, or in fact the Torah says gently borrowed. We had a whole conversation around that, actually, the Torah class that this Torah portion was about, talking about compensation, fair compensation. What do you get when you free yourself from 400 years of slavery? So either it was stealing or borrowing or gently asking for compensation. Never mind, because whatever we got, we melted it into a golden calf. Because the golden calf was the ways of Egypt, was the idol worshipping that we revolved back to, what was comfortable. And here is Moses coming down the mountain after 40 days and 40 nights with an announcement board. Tomorrow morning, Torah class at 10:30. And he sees us. He sees us dancing around the golden calf, and indulging in those pagan rituals. And he holds the tablets of the law and says to himself, they're not ready. They're not at a level of consciousness, at a level of awareness that is there for them to receive this. And so he smashes the tablets down on the ground, and they break into 1,000 pieces. He takes a little while to admonish us, and eventually he goes back up the mountain for another 40 days and 40 nights. And after that he comes back down with another set of tablets. And there's a debate between the rabbis, because the Torah seems to be telling us that they were identical. That both of them were, as it says in the Torah, carved by the finger of God. But some rabbis said that actually they were different. But the tablets that we have right now, the 10 commandments as we know them, the 10 utterances, are actually at a lower level of consciousness than the first one were written. But we couldn't hear or we could understand the first one. So we had to get something that was palatable for us just out of Egypt a few days before. And part of the injunction was that we were now to build a tabernacle, the tent of meeting, the sacred space where we would host the tablets of the law in the Ark of the Covenant. And it's just beautiful how we are asked to participate, every single one of us, invited to create together that sacred space, that sanctuary, that portable mishkan, portable dwelling places in the wilderness, the sanctuary that is going to follow us for the rest of our journey. And I wrote it down because the verses are just so beautiful. We are called to serve, to build God's sanctuary on earth. And it is written, everyone whose heart was uplifted and everyone whose spirit was moved contributed their part to the Holy One in the building of the tent of meeting. And in Torah, which is very pithy and really rarely, if not ever, repeats itself, we see that phrasing 3, 4, 5 times in this Torah portion. I captured another little piece as well. Take from within yourself gifts to the Holy One. Everyone whose heart so moves him or her shall bring them gifts to the Eternal One. That's how you create sacred space. What is it really that we're building in the wilderness? What is the image that is carried by this idea of a sanctuary? The rabbis, most of the mystics tell us that the completion of the tabernacle was actually the fulfilling of the creation of the world. They base that on a lot of the phrasing that is, especially at the end, once the tabernacle is built, that Moses blesses the assembly of Israel. And the words that Moses uses are almost exactly the same words that God uses at the end of the story of Genesis. When God blesses the creation, she just manifested. And so the rabbis are looking at the same verses almost, and are saying the completion of the tabernacle is the completion of the work of creation. What that means is that God's sanctuary is, in fact, the whole of creation. Not just a little building in Rome or anywhere. It's the whole of creation. That is God's sanctuary. And if we understand that, we also understand what the rabbis are in fact telling us, especially those who come from the Kabbalistic perspective. They are telling us that we, each and every one of us, are indeed participants in the unfolding and the evolving of creation as it continues to unfold to this day. We are invited, in fact, to be the voices, the hands, the hearts through which creation continues to evolve, through which God continues to evolve, because God needs us as much as we need God. Whatever we understand that word to mean for ourselves. So how are we to manifest, to create sacred space, to create this world as sacred space? Well, the Torah is very clear. It can only come from a place of love. It can only come from those whose heart so moves them. We create this world as sacred space when we pour our heart into it, when we act in compassionate and caring ways. Now, I know that I've been somehow criticized for too often, perhaps, using the words compassion or the word care. Mostly by my wife, actually. She is my best critique. But I can tell you this, that I'm going to keep on using these words, and in fact, I'm going to use them more and more and more as the weeks and the months unfold. I'll tell you why. Because we're failing. As a society, we are failing. The American experiment is failing. We as a nation, we as a people are failing. And what is ailing us, what is on the verge of destroying our democracy, what is contributing to the unraveling of our planet's ecosystem, what is tearing apart the social fabric of our nation, is that we don't care. We don't care. We have to let go of the voice within that is trying to pretend we do, that is trying to justifying or rationalizing, and really face that we are in major ways are lacking basic compassion towards one another. We're lacking basic compassion and care towards our own children, towards our fellow Americans, our fellow human beings, our incarcerated, our poor, our minorities, our foreign residents, and everyone else for that matters. We've built a society on extreme competition and rogue individualism, and it is killing us. It is killing us. And I'm getting emotional, but what else can you get? About 10 days ago, I went to see this amazing movie, which I recommend all of us to go. The latest installment of Michael Moore documentary series, Where to Invade Next. It's got nothing to do with actually where to invade next. It has nothing to do with the next war or whatever, the next Iraq or Iran or North Korea or whatever the next one is. It has everything to do with taking the idea that when we invade a country, we go there and we take the best that country has to offer and we steal it from them and we bring it home. And so he carries the American flag and he travels through different countries of Europe and pretends to invade them, where in fact what he's doing is asking around, what's the best thing your country has to offer? Because I want to see if we can bring it home. And you know when there are moments where you really get deep within what the issue is, when somebody is not pointing the light at what's wrong with you, but actually turning the light at what's right with others. And you see what's right, and your heart breaks. You see what is going on in mostly the countries of Europe he visited. He also went to Tunisia. And he's not criticizing America. He's showing us what other nations are doing right. And that's more powerful than anything else. And it broke my heart. And I was crying like a little baby throughout that movie. Because I realized right then and there how much in this country we don't care about one another. How much we lack complete compassion with our own people, our own children. The way we pretend to educate our young. Trying to make them cogs into a system. Trying to get them to be really, really good at passing tests. And failing to actually transform them into vibrant, loving, compassionate citizens of their country, of their nation. Helping them figure out what it is to live a decent human life amidst their neighbors. Instead, we teach them rah, rah, America, and how can I step on everybody else's shoulder so that I can rise to the top, be the best at the test, and then go to college, to the best college there are, so that I can get in debt and be an indentured servant to this system that is going to continue to exploit them, give them minimum health care, if any at all, have them take, at best, a couple of weeks vacation a year, if they can, because oftentimes they have 2 or 3 jobs, so that's not a possibility. And not even allowing one another to care for our loved ones when they're sick, when they're ill, when they're in the hospital. And then you have the other side of that is how we treat our incarcerated ones. We bring them to this dark place, and instead of working with them to rehabilitate, to educate, to help them find ways to be part of the society, we exclude them, we punish them, we do extreme violence to them. And then when we one day release them, we release them with nothing to help them find their way back into society. They're banned, they can't find jobs because their files is stamped with felon. They have no way of becoming productive citizens. We even incarcerate 13 and 12 and 13-year-olds nowadays in adult prisons. And I can go on and on. You know, you can bring up your own examples. We don't care for each other. We do violence to each other. It's all about, how can I get mine so that you don't get yours? It's what we can get for our shareholders. And the hell with the planet and its inhabitants. So I want to start a revolution. Better yet, I want to rekindle the flame of a revolution that started 3,000 years ago in an ancient wilderness. When we were called to create a planet, to create a world based on compassion, based on caring, based on loving. I want to work together towards creating a compassionate society. It's a radical idea, isn't it? A radical idea. How dare we can stand and say we want to create a compassionate society for ourselves, for our children, for the next generations, for those who are sharing this ecosystem with us. I had this crazy idea to have, little buttons we could wear that say, I genuinely care about you. Can you imagine if we were face to face with one another and people could read our button, I genuinely care about you. Now how are we going to behave? It's like the high priest, as we create the sanctuary, the high priest, the garment of the high priest is also described, and he has to wear this gold plate on his forehead, the high priest, to serve in the sanctuary, in the tabernacle. And on that golden plate is engraved in like a ring, a signet ring. Do you know what a signet ring is? It's a ring that you used to put in wax. And then you would, stamp that ring on top of the letters to seal them. So the signet ring is actually like a mirror. It's a mirror, so that when you impress it, it shows it the right way. But on a ring, it's the wrong way around, right? And he was wearing this on his forehead, inscribed like a signet ring, holy to God. So when the sun, in Israel there's a lot of it, when the sun was reflecting on his forehead, he could see, like you do with your watch when there is a light, he could see reflected on the person in front of him, holy to God. And everyone he met on a sunny day, he knew it was holy to God. That's the same idea. I genuinely care about you. What if we walked our days with that intention? What if we met the people in our life with that intention? What if we went to the superintendent of our schools and say, I care about what my kids are eating at the cafeteria. What poison are you serving them? Just start with the cafeteria. Then we address the rest of the food chain that is poisoning each and every one of us, day in and day out. And then we wonder why there is a obesity problem in America. Because we don't care about each other. So we have to start this revolution yesterday.